Imagine waking up in a world with barely any clothes on, with nothing but a rock and a torch, and with one goal and one goal only in mind: survive. Well, that's Rust on console. You wake up somewhere on the map and get to work. As someone who's never played Rust, but heard so much about it and only knowing that the servers reset itself in all of its progression, it was needless to say, I was excited to get my hands on it and try it out for myself. With lobbies that can hold up to 100 people, I went in fairly confident I'd have a good time. Rust is very much a survival of the fittest type of game, with a big learning curve much like other survival games such as Minecraft, Ark, and DayZ. There's no right way to play this game. But with that being said, there are so many ways in which you can fail as well. As said before, this game is very much a survival of the fittest. That being said, killing someone who's asleep on the beach is as common as using the restroom. You'll often find a player who's logged out on the server just sleeping there on the floor defenseless, and it's often very tempting to bash them in with a rock and steal whatever loot they have. But that idea of killing a random player doesn't go away at all. You'll often find yourself coming face to face with another person, and usually it's best to look at them as an enemy, because most of the time that person has full intentions on killing you and stealing your loot that you potentially worked all day to get. And that's when it became abundantly clear to me that there are safety in numbers in this game. Because there's nothing more scarier than having someone chase you down from miles on end while their partner tries to shoot you with a bow and or gun. So the best way to avoid that is to either make friends quickly on the server, which can be very difficult, or load into the game with friends already. But playing with friends definitely made the experience much more enjoyable as opposed to going in alone. The combat in the game is somewhat clunky itself. It's very difficult to properly aim a weapon to hit what you want to hit, so don't expect a smooth fight like you would get in For Honor, Skyrim, or Call of Duty. Aiming is by far one of the hardest things to do in the game, because deciding whether or not you want to throw your weapon at them can be a tough decision, because if you miss, they can easily pick up said weapon and use it against you. Or if you have a gun or bow and deciding whether or not it's worth it to use a good bullet or arrow. Not to mention friendly fire is always on, so in combat or even in mining, you can accidentally hit someone or down one of your teammates, which can be equally funny and annoying. As for the learning curve in the game, it's definitely a big one to say the least. If you played any survival games, you should know the first thing you need to do is hit some trees. Granted, the initial part isn't hard at all. The game starts you off with some basic starter blueprints, but it doesn't tell you how to make them or how to get the supplies. It can often get frustrating figuring out if a rock is going to give you something or if it's just placed there for the aesthetic of the game, because most, if not all, the trees in the game are destructible and can be used to gather resources. Once you've built all the starter items, finding blueprints to build new things in the game can be a task on its own, because blueprints can only be found in barrels, and more times than not, you'll often get a duplicate of a blueprint of something you've already learned. So finding a research table or building a level 1 workbench is very necessary. But with all that being said, you'll still need to have all the resources at hand, which in itself is a game of chance. But once you finally got a good handle on the game itself and built a nice little home, there's still much more you need to do. You need to make sure that you have a nice little farm that other players won't steal from so you can eat and not starve to death, as well as having a good water supply nearby so you don't die of dehydration. And of course, making sure you have a tool closet and regularly restock it so your base doesn't fall apart on you. Not to mention always being on the lookout to make sure other players don't attempt to raid your base when it's vulnerable. I reviewed this on the Xbox Series X, but it's important to note that it's not enhanced for the Series X. I played the Xbox One version. Rust hasn't been optimized or tested yet for both the Xbox Series X and PS5. With that out of the way, the game itself mostly ran smooth, but it did have some hiccups here and there too. At random moments I would find myself rubber banding, even in low populated servers, and my game would stutter every so often, leading me to believe my game would crash, and which it would sometimes, or it would lag incredibly bad to catch up. All in all, Rust is a very fun game to play, and it's even more fun to play with a group of people. Although the combat may seem a bit clunky at times, it still can be very intense due to the fact that you could possibly lose everything that you've worked for. Getting over the learning curve may be a challenge of its own, but that's what gives survival games their charm. It's easy to assume everyone is out to get you in the game, because most are. And for better or worse, it's a nice touch that all servers reset itself after a while to avoid major players grieving others. With that being said, we at the Geek Press give Rust on console a 8.5 out of 10. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the Geek Press for more geeky content. My name's Luis Gutierrez, and thanks for watching.